with this wrist stretching series, I would say it's probably the most important exercise in this beginner handstand program, simply because the amount of time people generally spend weight bearing on their wrists is very minimal, and then you start doing a program like this where we start to go 0 to 60 pretty quickly here, and if you're not kind of keeping all your ducks in a row here, mobilizing your wrist, strengthening the joints, you're going to run into problems or overuse injuries in the wrist later down the road. And especially with the nature of our day-to-day activities, texting, working in front of a computer all day long, most people's wrists are extremely weak and extremely tight. So even if you have no interest in developing a handstand, which I don't know why you would have downloaded this program, but this wrist series would still be great for anyone. And while I have them prescribed as the warm-up for prior to every single session, you could still do these 3 stretches every single day, even when you aren't training handstands. They're that important. So please, please, please be consistent with these. It's going to be just accumulating reps time and time again here. So we're looking at 3 stretches within this series. The first one is a standard wrist extension stretch. So I always cue athletes, I want them splaying their fingers or pulling their fingers apart as far as they can, so we have the greatest space that we can achieve between the hands. So splaying the fingers apart as far as we can, keeping the elbows locked out. And I've just come to really like screwing my hands into the ground so the pit of the elbow faces forward. It just kind of sets the shoulder better here. It's not necessary, but it's just a habit I've gotten into over time. So I screw my hands into the ground. I rock forward, keeping those elbows locked out. So as I rock forward, I'm thinking about my shoulder joint going above or over my wrist joint. I pause for a moment. I come back. Prior to the next rep, I screw in my hands to the ground. I rock forward. I come back. Really, the main thing we're looking for here is just make sure people aren't bending their elbows to take pressure off the wrist and not actually hit that wrist stretch. So main thing, or the main common fault, not locking out the elbows. So that's our standard wrist extension stretch, and it's really hitting the muscles on this side of the forearm here. Now we're going to do a second wrist extension stretch that hits all the muscles on this side of the forearm. So the setup's going to be the same in terms of splaying the fingers as far apart as we can. I want the fingers now, this time pointing towards my knee, elbows locked out, and now I'm going to sit my butt back towards my heels. I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to come out of it. Each time I'm going to make sure those elbows stay locked out as I rock my butt back towards my heels. Come back out of it. This is going to be a fairly intense stretch as compared to the first one, because we rarely stretch these muscles in the front of the forearm. Same thing, we're looking to avoid not bending the elbows with this one. So both of those stretches, what's referred to as wrist extension, so bringing the wrist this way. Common position in things like front rack, Olympic lifting, and handstands. Go figure. Now we're actually going to work on wrist flexion, or bringing the wrist this way too, for a couple of reasons. It's an important range of motion that's very neglected, and then also we're doing so much wrist extension stuff. Let's just balance it out with some wrist flexion too. So also, this is a very uncomfortable position at first. So go very, very, very slowly with this. With this one especially, aim to strain, but don't have any pain. You're going to feel like maybe you don't even have to move in and out of range of motion. It's that tight. So same beginning setup, elbows locked out, splaying the fingers apart as far as we can, but this time we're putting this part of the wrist on the floor, or this part of the hand. Elbows locked out, splaying the fingers apart, and then I'm just going to sit my butt back towards my heels. I'm going to pause for a moment, come out of it. Butt back towards the heels, pause for a moment, come out of it. And just like all the other ones, the tendency is going to be to try to unlock the elbows or bend the elbows. So make sure you keep the elbows locked the entire time. Like I've already kind of stressed here, please do these every day. These are most critical, the most important thing you can do in terms of wrist health. It can affect the shoulders, upper back, neck, elbows. So it's extremely important you're taking care of your wrists now so we don't run into problems later on.